Well, I'm a bit gobsmacked, as you would say, because they sang the exact same dog songs that I was going to sing. Fuck. So we'll move on to the second part of my presentation. When I'm asked to give lectures, both abroad and at home in the US, I live and work in New York City, I'm often asked, what will be the title of your lecture? And I never know what to say, because the real title should be, of course, Chip Kid takes an hour of your life that you will never get back, ever. But then no one would show up. So what I do instead is I take phrases that I either read or hear in my daily life, living and working in New York City, and I use them as the titles of my lectures. And a couple of months ago, I heard a fantastic one. So I'm standing in the back of the line at the Kentucky Fried Chicken, just off of Union Square, 14th Street. And at the front of the line is this skinny little guy, who's obviously there by himself, and he orders 3 buckets of 21-piece original recipe chicken. Okay? So the woman behind the counter says, "Is that for here or to go?" And this being New York, he says, "Excuse me? How the hell would I sit here by myself and eat 3 buckets of 21-piece original recipe chicken?" And this being New York, she replies, "Bitch, I don't know your life." And everything changed. This became my new mantra. Try it. Try it on your parents. Or try it on the police. Anyway, so that is the title of today's presentation. Now, speaking of lives, I'm going to cleverly segue into the first project I'm going to talk about. Now, most of what I do is book jacket covers. I work for Knopf Publishing, which is part of Random House, a huge publisher in the US. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is a memoir by this guy named David Shields. And it's a midlife crisis thing, and he's turning 50, and his dad is turning 80, and yet his dad has so much more energy and is so much more optimistic than he is, and what does this mean? And this book has a great title, which is this. So I start to think, all right, where might I encounter this phrase in my daily life? And so one evening in Chinatown, as I was finishing up a meal, the answer came to me. And so I just set up a very simple photo shoot. And there we go. And the fortune cookie arrives, and instead of breaking it open and it says, you will have long, happy life, it says, no, one day you will be dead. And then I made it red so that people would buy it. So I thought this was adorable. Now, we have a sort of curious hierarchy of approval for these things. First, it goes to the editor. The editor approves it, then it goes to our editor-in-chief. He approves it, then it goes to our marketing department. They approve it, and then it goes to the author. Now, we sort of have a policy of the customer is always right. The customer in this case being the author. And so everybody loved it except him. He the opposite of loved it. Oh my God, you've taken my incredibly profound title and you've put a smiley and a frowny face on it, and no, you'll have to start over. So I'm thinking, all right, how about some type? How about some type? Type is nice, you can read it. So here we go. I still want it to have a shred of a concept to it. So it's taking your eye on a journey. The thing about life is that one day you'll be dead. Boop, you're dead. So show it to the editor. Editor loves it. Editor-in-chief loves it. Marketing loves it. Send it to the author the opposite of loves it. This is still too cute, it's too playful. So what I think you should do is change the color blue and make it flush left and rag right, and all the same size, and there should be a pink dot on it, and my name should be in yellow, and other than that, you can do whatever you want. So, there it is, and so this was the final cover. This is how it went out into the world, and shortly thereafter, he got a rather snarky, mean review in the New York Times book review, and I was very happy about that. Okay. Augustine Burroughs, I'm not sure how popular he is over here. I think he is to a certain extent, because I know he's published in England. And anyway, he, as you may or may not know, is the running with scissors guy. He's made a living out of writing books about his horrible childhood. So I did not work on that one, but the follow-up memoir was going to be called This. And this is about his stint being a hotshot advertising executive in New York City in his early 20s and a raging alcoholic, which all sounds redundant, I know. But what happened was his colleagues did what's called an intervention. And they sat him down one day and they said, you will go into rehab, or you will be fired and you will die. So that was pretty hard for him to argue with. Now, what I decided to do with this is to turn it into Typography 101, only the opposite. So when I was in Type 101, the very first assignment was select a word and make it look like what it says it is. But now we want to take the word and make it look like it's in denial. And so this is about the single most low-tech solution you can imagine. I set up the type in Quark, printed it out on an Epson printer using water-soluble ink, taped it to the wall, took a bucket of water, and threw it at it. Literally. And there it is. So this made everybody reasonably happy. And so one day, Augustine tells me an amusing little story about being stuck in the airport and his flight is delayed or whatever, so he goes to the bookstore to see if they're selling his books, and they inevitably are. And a woman comes up to this one, and she picks it up and she squints at it, and she takes it over to the counter, and she says to the man behind the counter, "This one's ruined." And the guy behind the counter says, "I know, lady, they all came in that way." So, all right. Augustine's next book was going to be called This. And so he calls me up on the phone and he says, this is the title of my book. And bing, braingasm. I immediately came up with an idea for the cover. And I said, I know exactly what the cover of your book should be. And he said, what? And I said, I'm not going to tell you. I'm a terrible lawyer for my work. I can't explain, I can't talk you into liking it or getting it. You know, it's either going to work for you in a bookstore or online or whatever, or not. But so I wanted to show him the idea rather than tell him. Now, the person I did want to tell the idea to is a photographer named Jeff Spear, so that we can do this photo shoot. So basically, I told him the idea, and he put an ad in the Village Voice asking for a very specific kind of hand model. Now, we received several sort of crank responses, but then we've actually found the right person. And he was very pleased because he doesn't get a lot of work as a hand model. So this was a freelance job, so I sent it off to the art director, and he replied rather quickly. And he said, everyone loves it, marketing loves it, and the reason they love it is because it's yellow and it has a hand on it. I'm not going to argue with that. Now, some of that story I just told you was absolute bullshit. We did not put an ad in the Village Voice. This is a Photoshop trick. It's my hand. You will notice that the two fingers to the right of the pinky are rather remarkably similar upon close inspection. All right? But this is how the book goes out into the world. Now, shortly thereafter, Augustine forwards me an email from a fan who said, it's a woman in Phoenix, Arizona. And she said, when I saw your book in the bookstore, I started to cry because I realized I was not alone. This is not a Photoshop trick. And I was thinking, Gerline, where were you when we needed you? My favorite part of this image is the 30% off sticker. Which, of course, should say 30% more. Did the math. Okay, I've been doing this for 23 years and counting. I started at Random House in the fall of 1986. And I've reached a point in my career where it's just assumed that when I'm designing a book jacket, that somebody sends me the manuscript, and I concentrate real hard, and I part my cheeks, and out it comes, and I just pick it up and say, look, here it is, look what I made, isn't this nice? And they say, yes, it is so nice that you made that thing, and we love it, and all of a sudden the champagne corks are popping, and the rose petals are coming down from the ceiling, and there's laughing and dancing. No. No, no. I get my shit rejected all the time. Still, pisses me off. All right, so, Augustine, right? Now this should have been the biggest fucking no-brainer on the planet. Augustine Burroughs on Christmas with this incredible title, You Better Not Cry. So obviously what you should do is find a picture of some poor bastard department store Santa Claus sitting there with a screaming brat on his lap. Right? Done. Well, no, because at the time, this is about a year ago, working on this, Chronicle Books came out with an entire book of these things. I don't remember what it was called, but it ruined that concept. So at the same time, I started to get an email blog from another photographer I know and work with, a guy named Thomas Allen. And he does these great little still life setups. And he decided to do the 12 tawdry days of Christmas, where he was going to go to the local Goodwill, that's the thrift shop where people send their secondhand stuff, and find like the gaudiest, tawdriest Christmas items he could each day and post them. And so this seemed like some kind of divine intervention. And one of the days, he had this, just dopey little ceramic figurine of this girl bundled up against the cold with a Christmas wreath, freaking out. Inexplicably. So, huzzah, right? And I sent it to Augustine, and he said, you know, it's cute, but it's just not mean enough. I really want to be mean. I said, all right. So went back to Tom, and I said, you know, on like the third day of your tawdry Christmas, you had that one ceramic Santa Claus sort of candy dish, right? I said, why don't you take that and do something fun with it? And so here we go. Now, I said, I think this is a good start, but we're not, they could actually be having fun in there, which is no-go. So let's not do people, let's do firearms. And this just required buying a few G.I. Joe figures, right? And I said, okay, I think it's almost there, but let's bring her back. And now she has something to cry about. So, perfecto. I sent this off to the art director, and a week went by, and I didn't hear anything. Another week goes by, and I don't hear anything, and I know that I'm toast. Because, as some of you probably know, if they like it, they tell you and right away. And if they don't, you don't hear anything because they can't figure out how to tell you they hate it, plus they've already hired somebody else. And sure enough, the third week, the art director calls me up and he says, you know, we were really back and forth on this one, but ultimately, we couldn't figure out whether Santa was showing the little girl his penis. And I'm thinking, what, the guns aren't enough for you? But I said, do they want him to? And he said, no, they don't. So we have to start over yet again. Now, again, I beg of you, I did not steal the thunder of those people that were on here before me. But I figured, all right, what's the other crazy thing that people do on the holidays to celebrate, right? And that is, you know, these pictures are all over the web, and people send them to me, and I get a big kick out of them. So basically, the idea is, what celebrates our risen Lord better than clamping a pair of bunny ears onto your cat? Or turning it into a lamb? Or my favorite, the quacky hat. And what's so great about this is it looks just so angry. And how could you do this to me? I thought you loved me. All right, so I think this is a fun direction, but obviously this is the wrong holiday, so we have to get back to Christmas. And he really looks pissed, but doesn't have much power. This is just wrong, and it's about 5 different kinds of wrong, but that's, one of them being, that's a big dog. You really want him to eat your asshole out for doing this to you. This reminded me of Dr. Seuss, which I thought was fun, but this guy really looks upset. He's really going to lose it. But then again, even better, meanness. Meanness. And all you can hope, for the sake of the photographer, of this picture is that there's a thick slab of plexiglass between him and this animal, because he's about to attack. So anyway, I thought, okay, we've solved it. And I sent it off, and a week goes by, and I don't hear anything, and another week goes by, and I still don't hear anything. And of course, by the 3rd week, the art director calls and says, oh, yes, you know what, bill a kill fee, we solved it in-house. Thank you. So I'm thinking, all right, so what are they going to come up with? And this is for real. Somebody in marketing obviously changed their mind. Ho-de fucking ho. All right. I do a lot of lecturing at schools. And inevitably, in the Q&A, one of the first questions is, Mr. Kid, do you ever get like a manuscript for a book that you don't want to work on or you don't like and you don't want to read, but you have to do the jacket? And do you ever get a manuscript for a book that you don't like and you don't want to read and you don't want to do the jacket for it, but then you have to read the manuscript? Do you ever get a manuscript for a book that you don't want to work on and you have to work on it? And do you get that manuscript of the book that you don't want to work on? Yes. Certainly, I don't get to work on Pulitzer Prize winners all the time, or I'd be starving to death. But this sort of book, I almost turned down because it's the sort of thing that I just don't like at all. But I did come up with a concept for it that I thought could work. So basically, this woman, this author of this thing, contacted me directly, and it was a book about this big, fat financial firm, Morgan Stanley, and apparently there was some coup and 8 of the board members managed to throw out the CEO. Why they stopped there, God knows. But anyway, that's what this is about. And so, again, I call my friend Jeff, and we took these little Lionel train figures of the businessman, right? And then so we construct this kind of, again, in Photoshop. But you can see it's almost like a narrative is forming. What if this was a novel about this happening? And their corporate color is this stupid blue, so I used that. And so I send it off to her, and she calls me up, and she says, oh, no. What? This just doesn't have the soul of Morgan Stanley. And I'm thinking, biatch! It's a hedge fund company. They have no soul. But that was it. You know, no second try. And it was really fun to see how this ended up. This is the real thing that they did. She was right. This is the soul of Morgan Stanley. All right. Yes, your eyes aren't deceiving you. So, Fangland, and not Fangland, Fangland is the gripping story of young, undead, blood-sucking career people who are in network broadcasting on a fast track to the top at a very popular television news magazine, not unlike CBS, CBS's 60 Minutes, where the author used to work. Anyway, it's about, you know, these young, beautiful, blood-sucking, undead career people in network broadcasting and their lives and their love. This is a stupid book. It's dumb. It's idiotic. I mean, maybe some genius could have figured it out, but this guy is not that. Anyway, but I have an idea. So I don't care that it's stupid. So I'm thinking, all right, I'm one of these, you know, beautiful, young, undead, blood-sucking network television people, and I meet another such attractive person, and we go out on a date, and that goes well, and so we go home, and we're going to get busy, but first we're going to use a little protection. You know, so you take out your toothpaste and put a little bit. And then I made it red so that people will buy it. And the art director calls me up right away. I'll give him that. But he said, you know, everybody hates this. It's just not scary enough. And I said, well, you're scaring me. And that was the end of that. Okay, Paul Rudnick. This book is just out now. It's Humorous Essays by Paul Rudnick. If you've seen either of the Addams Family movies, and I urge you to if you haven't, you know his work because he wrote them both. He writes a lot for the theater, plays, and he writes a lot for the New Yorker and some of the film stuff. And so this is sort of like short, funny essays. And most of them appeared in the New Yorker magazine, which I read, so I read most of them, and I'm a fan. And so he's got a very camp sensibility. And I was looking at images, and there's this photographer named David Graham, who does lots of really funny stuff of like lawn ornaments and that kind of thing. But he was down in a wax museum in Houston, Texas, and he took this picture. And the title refers to something that one of his aunts just says all the time if there's something that she thinks is horrible. You're like, oh, John McCain, I shudder. And so, you know, here's Toto, and he's freaking out. He's just, you know, shuddering, right? And he probably melted because it's really hot in Houston. But anyway, this just seems perfect to me, you know. And then you cut off Dorothy's head so that we don't, you know, have to worry about legal issues. And there it is. And so I sent this off to the art director. And he got back to me and said, you know, we all laughed about this. This was so funny. But no. I said, why? They said, everybody thinks it's just too gay. And I said, well, you're a bunch of fucking homophobes. But that doesn't help me because I have to keep working on this. So I'm just thinking about Rudnick's sensibility. Like, this would be his version of walking the dog in New York City. But no. This is from the Museum of Natural History. But I just think they're adorable. It's a diorama. But they said, no bare boobies on the front cover, sorry. And this, and the subtitle, I'm sorry, is "And Other Reactions to Life, Death in New Jersey." He grew up in New Jersey. So here we are in New Jersey, and I love this picture for several reasons. Now, I did not alter the color of this picture at all, okay? So here's a telegraph to them. The sun isn't out. It's really cloudy. Why are you out there? And why do you have umbrellas? Funny, right? So sent it off, and it almost made it. The editor-in-chief liked it. It was the editor that didn't like it, and he said, the type just isn't funny enough. I'm like, oh, okay, here you go. But no, that's not good enough either. So then I really want this job. I do not want this to go away. I love Paul. And so I go back to the manuscript, which is always the best thing to do. And it turns out that there were essays in there that did not appear in the New Yorker that I hadn't read. So one of them was his personal account of really being in New York in the mid to late 1980s, in the theater world, in the middle of the AIDS crisis when it was the worst. And it's incredibly moving, jarring stuff. And his friends, he's dying all the time and going to funerals all the time, and it's just incredible. And then there's another essay on his eating habits, which don't seem like it could even be real, but they are. And he just eats candy. That's it. And he's this thin and looks totally normal, and he just eats candy. And it's true, because we actually went out to lunch. And I said, what kind of food do you want? He said, it doesn't matter, because I'm just going to sit and drink a Coke and watch you, because I just eat candy. So, all right. So one of the things he likes the best are, I'm assuming you have them over here, they're these sugar-coated marshmallow things called Peeps, and you get them at Easter, right? And so I got some Peeps, and I figure out, all right, we can do a really good beauty shot of a Peep, and it'll look graphic and good, and I feel like I haven't seen that before. So I take it over to Jeff, and Jeff has a little boy, Jet, who is 4, and my godson, and he's adorable, but before we could stop him, he took one of the Peeps, and he ripped it off, and he ate it. Now, these things come in blocks of lines, and it was like, aha, there it is. Not one Peep, but several. And they have these sort of like great sort of slightly anxiety-ridden looks on their faces. Like, I think that kid just ate one of us. Am I next? Which was how he felt during the AIDS thing. He's like, am I going to be next? And so, this time I made it blue. They rejected the red one because they didn't think people would buy it. But anyway, that's how that went out into the world. There's the triumph of the Peeps. Okay. David Sedaris, brilliant humorist, lives part-time in London. I've been doing his covers for years. And so he comes up with a new collection of essays, and this is what he wants to call it, All the Beauty You Will Ever Need, which I think is an excellent title. So I start the process. It's like, well, where might I encounter this phrase in my daily life? And one night, after dinner, the idea came to me, and we set up a simple photo shoot, and there it is. And made it red so people will buy it. So I sent it off to the publisher, and they liked it a lot. They sent it to David. He the opposite of liked it a lot. You've taken my great, profound title, and you've put smiley faces on it, and no. this will not do. So I'm thinking, all right. Now, in the meantime, he's going through customs, I believe in London, and they stamped his passport with this phrase. And this struck him as the funniest thing he had ever seen in his entire life. Indefinite leave to remain. So I'm thinking, okay, this is the new title. So now we have to deal with this. So I'm thinking, how about some type? Type is nice. You can read it. So what's happening here is I'm taking your eye on a journey. David Sedaris, indefinite leave to remain. Boop, and you're gone. Nobody liked this. Why did you do this? They said. It makes us sad. So, all right. In the meantime, the art director calls me up and he says, well, David has found a piece of art that he really likes, and it's a painting of a skeleton smoking by Van Gogh. And I'm thinking, well, that just sounds dumb. But the reality of it actually was pretty cool. And lo and behold, we could get the rights to it. Go figure. So my idea was that the title was frankly so meaningless that why don't we just blind emboss it onto the front? You know, all that really matters is it's the new David Sedaris book, right? So that's what I was trying to convey with this. No one bought that. No. So now I'm thinking, all right, how do I deal with this meaningless title on this piece of art? Maybe it's the ash off the cigarette. Or maybe it's the smoke coming up over the, or maybe the skull, the skeleton is going through customs and they stamp his head. Yeah. No? Not buying it? In the meantime, David is in a second-hand bookstore somewhere in France, and he comes upon, of all things, a pamphlet that was issued in Japan during the middle of World War II that would tell you what to do just in case there's a nuclear attack by the United States. Like that's gonna happen. So, chapter 4 is, you know, what to do when you're on fire. And it says, when you are engulfed in flames. So this became the new most hilarious thing that he'd ever heard. And so I'm, you know, we're about 5 months into the process at this point, and I said to the art director, well, do we still have the skeleton? She said, yes. So I was relieved about that. So I'm thinking, all right, why don't we just sticker it? Put on a sticker. Sticker. It's like a warning thing, and so you can then just peel it off when you get home. Nope, nobody fell for that one. How about if it's a warning from the Surgeon General? You know, don't smoke or you'll become a skeleton. And at this point, we all just decided, you know what, life is too short. Just put it in a band at the bottom of the damn jacket and get on with our lives. This is ridiculous. Stop trying to be clever. It's not going to be clever. It's the new David Sedaris book. We could call it Steaming Piece of Shit, and everybody would buy it. So there it was, and that's how it went out into the world. And debuted at #1, of course. Okay, one thing I love about my job, and I do love my job, and there's a whole comic book side to it that I'm not going into today, or we'd be here for hours, but is the range of books that I work on is very, very broad, and it allows me to do very different kinds of feelings of design. And so last August, within 1 week, I designed what I consider to be one of my most sinister covers, and then 3 days later, one of the most adorable. The sinister one is called Imperial Bedrooms, which is from the title of an Elvis Costello album, of course. And it's this incredibly creepy sequel to Less Than Zero, which was the book that put him on the map, and it takes place 30 years later. And there's this really horrible scene at the end where this guy is committing some really, truly awful stuff. And one of his victims, she's thinking, well, I now know who the devil is, and I now know what the devil is like, and if I meet him in the hereafter, I won't be scared anymore. And I found this image. It's a photograph It's not manipulated in any way other than that it's cropped, and it's of a guy in a ritual in Venezuela where every summer they drive out the devil from the town. And so here he is. And it's just really simple, graphic, and it's powerful enough that we can make his name that big, which at this point we need to do because he's Bret Easton Ellis, and make sure that you can at least see less than 0 at the bottom there, and there it is, right? And so this just like sailed right on through. Like this is when it goes the way it's supposed to go, when I do something and they all like it. Now, the same week, new novel by Alexander McCall Smith, which I hope you know, is the author of the series #1 Ladies Detective Agency. So his new series is going to be called Corduroy Mansions, and it's a fictitious sort of, I don't know what you'd call it, sort of like a combination apartment and hotel in London, and each person, all the different characters live on the different floors, and they're all very lovably eccentric, and you follow their lives almost like an adorable soap opera. And one element that ties it all together is they have a little house dog, back to dogs, called Freddie de la Haye. And Freddie de la Haye is a Pimlico Terrier. Now, I spent the better part of a day trying to find a Pimlico Terrier image when I finally learned that the author made it up. It doesn't exist. But I did find a cute little guy to put on there. And so I said to the editor, I said, I think Freddie is the answer. And I actually had never done this, but there he is. How could you resist that face? But I love it. Like within 4 days, I'm Satan. Yeah, but I'm Freddie de la Haye. Whee! So that's fun. Okay. I'm also asked, do you design your own books for your own books? I wrote a second novel called The Learners, and it's this kind of, it's funny, but it centers around the obedience to authority experiments that were conducted at Yale University by Stanley Milgram in the early 1960s, where people were tricked into thinking they were shocking other test subjects to death. And I've been obsessed with this for quite some time. It's actually a pretty good metaphor for the design business, but anyway. So at the time, I was editing the genius graphic novel by Charles Burns called Black Hole, and Charles is a friend, so I wanted to hire him to do a drawing of me, but I need to comp the thing up so that my publisher will accept it, and so we're going to go with this guy. I want a screen, basically. So we're going to go with the guy on the right, get rid of the unibrow, and the jacket is going to be this die-cut, so the red is the separate piece of paper, the face is behind it. This was the first sort of go, and then I switched out the type and the author name because the balance is better. And so I show this to the publisher, and they said, wow, we love it, you're done. And I said, well, no. It's going to look like this, only a lot better, because I'm going to get it hand-lettered and all this kind of thing. And they almost fought me on it, but they finally let me go. So now I'm going to hire Charles to do a drawing, and of course I'm a narcissist, so I want it to be me. And so this is proof positive of why I'm not an illustrator, because I can't draw. But so I give this to Charles for reference, and then I give him some photo reference too. And then he's great, so we get the pencil. And then that's terrific, so we go to ink. And that's terrific. Now when I turn it over, I want the eyes to be closed, so he does that, and that's cool. So now the trick is when you take the jacket off, you think you're going to get the mouth, but you don't. You're going to get the shock machine. So we need to comp up the shock machine. There's a reference for that, and Charles does this. The needle moving to the right, of course. And then I got my friend Chris Ware to do the hand lettering. One of the characters actually in the book is based on him and does this kind of hand lettering. So this was perfect. And so there we are. And when you take the jacket off, like I said, instead of getting a mouth, you get the vault machine. Okay, I'm going to finish with James Ellroy. I hope at least some of you know who he is. He's a very well-known crime writer. And Los Angeles based, and very gritty, very noir. And I've been doing his jackets for, it seems like forever, probably for 15, 16 years. And every couple of years he finishes one. And he's actually quite a nut. And he's best known for LA. The movie LA Confidential was made out of one of his books, which is a terrific movie. And then last year, Brian De Palma made The Black Dahlia, which is not a terrific movie. It was really, really upsetting. But anyway, the new book, which is just out now, is called Blood's a Rover, which I believe is a quote from T.S. Eliot. And this came about a woman who was a photographer made an appointment to see me, and she said, I have pictures of India that I took in India. I lived in India for a year. So I looked at them, and I thought they were interesting. And she had another portfolio with her, and I said, what's that? She said, oh, you don't want to see that. Those are my pictures of L.A. And I said, bring them on. And sure enough, one of them was this, with this kind of weird, whatever it is, roving in the street. And so this is just out now. Now, last summer, the end of last summer, a woman who's a filmmaker named Rachel Talbot said to me, I'm making these 5-minute films of people whose work I like, and I'd like to do one of you with one of your authors. So why don't you pick somebody and we'll see if they're game. And so I figured that James probably would be, and he was. And so she just sent me the finished movie now. And so here it is. So brace yourself. He's a little crazy. I'm a blank slate. My head is filled with nothing. The author fills my head up with their manuscript. Then I react. I actually try not to have a style. I prefer to have a sensibility. One of the advantages of being a book designer is that it's not really up to me to come up with the ideas. That's what the author does. They're really relying on you, the designer, to figure out what their book is going to look like and to give it a face. Elmore Leonard, Donna Tartt, Bret Easton Ellis, Jay McInerney, and James Elroy.
I'm the demon dog from American literature.
Well, what else is he going to call himself?
Death dog of demonic destiny. I dig alliteration. I dig language. I want to recreate Los Angeles's political and social history and America's to my own specifications. It's benign, enormous megalomania. You get to assassinate JFK, hang out with the Klan in Mississippi, bug bathhouses with gay Edgar Hoover, buy up Vegas, and nobody gets hurt. Yeah, what a ride.
James Elroy is Mickey Spillane with a master's degree, except I know that James doesn't have a master's degree.
Let's count the books I've done with Chip. White Jazz,
My Dark Places, the memoir,
Cold 6000,
Blood on the Moon,
Crime Wave,
American Tabloid,
Hollywood Nocturnes,
Destination Morgue.
and my upcoming novel, Blood's a Rover.
With James's books, the first thing you're going to see is Elroy.
The real trinity of Camelot was look good, kick ass, get laid.
I want the covers to surprise you, but not mislead you.
It's time to demythologize an era and build a new myth from the gutter to the stars.
And to indicate a good bit of what you're sort of in for.
America was never innocent. We popped our cherry on the boat over and looked back with no regrets.
You can't ascribe our fall from grace to any single event or set of circumstances.
American Tabloid is the first book in my Underworld USA trilogy. It is the story of the rise and fall of John Kennedy.
With James's books, you just get so into it and so involved that you feel like you're there, you're in this world, and it's a very dangerous place, and it's a very upside down place because the cops are just as bad as the criminals. It's just they're wearing different clothing.
Our continuing narrative line is blurred past truth and hindsight.
On the hardcover of American Tabloid, you're getting a dissection and then reconstruction of elements of the tabloid. It's very simple. In a way, it almost designs itself.
I want people to read these books as obsessively as I've written them, and I want the fucking things to look good. Your death defines my life. I want to find the love we never had and explicate it in your name.
My Dark Places is James' memoir of the central event in his life, which was the murder of his mother. It became a graphic design problem of spatial relationship and how she literally loomed so large over him.
White, red, black, gray. Approximation of crime scene footage.
The red can suggest blood without showing it. You're either dead or you're alive. You're either a criminal or you're not. There aren't a lot of shades of gray there.
I want to take your secrets public. I want to burn down the distance between us. I want to give you breath. When I write a novel, I do not think of what the covers will look like. With Chip Kidd, you leave it to him because it will be conceived and realized on an unimaginable plane.
James is reinventing crime fiction, so I feel it's my obligation to also reinvent the crime fiction jacket.
I am the supreme genius of crime fiction. Chip Kidd is the supreme genius of dust jacket design, and that is no fucking shit.
Thank you, Dublin.